Good morning. Thanks everyone for your attention and for your efforts to put together today's event. We're a young company, a growth company, but we set ourselves apart as being homegrown here in New York City. We were founded within the engine room of 345 Park Avenue, which is at the intersection of 52nd and Park and is the flagship building of Rudin Management Company. But to be fair, we are a company and one that is growing largely as a function of many of the folks that are in the room today. Much of the early feedback we received originally from NYSERDA. We've received a tremendous amount of feedback from Michael and Michael, your respective colleagues at RXR and at Brookfield. And I'm happy to say that we've been in the news quite recently, which I'll tell you about in a second. But in terms of objectives for today's session, I've got three of them. One of which is to share with you a playbook for how we can go about helping you all decarbonize in concert with tenants in your buildings. And of course, I'd secondly like to identify some folks that might be great customers of ours. But then thirdly, you may have noticed that there's a cluster of participants in the PropTech challenge over on that side of the room. Vivek and Ben, I was sitting behind you. Aaron, I was sitting right to the sort of right and rear of you. Sam, I was sitting next to you as well, largely because I'm here to find partners. And that's largely a function of the fact that if we are going to save the world, or if that feels slightly uncomfortable to say, if we're going to at least turn back the clock on climate change one building at a time, we're going to need to do it together. So with that being said, as I mentioned earlier, I'm Sonu Panda, I'm CEO of Prescriptive Data. We're an enterprise software company based here in New York City. And we are in the belly of the beast as it relates to decarbonization. So you may have seen there's a bit of news that's been on the wires over the last sort of 2 or 3 days or so. We have been on an epic journey with JP Chase as one of the two key components of their carbon net zero by 2030 program. In fact, you probably saw me high-fiving with Lincoln there because we've been collaborating for quite some time for the benefit of JPMC, but I have to admit, with all this COVID business, we're meeting for the very first time. And if I'd known that I would see him here, I would have gotten my hair cut. In any case, for organizations that are leading with a carbon net zero first posture and position, we've developed a solution that's oriented towards the application of all sorts of artificial intelligence and machine learning logic as applies to every stream of data within their built environment. So to give you a frame of reference for the scale and scope of what we're looking to accomplish here, first and foremost, we've built an operating system for a building, which means any type of data from any type of hardware source, from any partner, anywhere in the world, we're looking to find a way to, through our middleware, ingest that data, and with the application of artificial intelligence and machine learning, make sense of it in real time from the point of view of intervening when there are negative patterns, amplifying and boosting positive patterns, and doing it all with an eye towards, first and foremost, traditional smart building operating efficiency oriented objectives, with decarbonization just being one of those key but very, very important objectives. From a scale standpoint, we started at 383 Madison. We're now mandated to roll out Prescriptive Data's kit, which we call Nantum, the name of our flagship building operating system, across an additional 26 million square feet of space, which is all of JP Morgan's commercial properties, owned properties, commercial lease properties, their specialty real estate, everything from real estate, warehouses to their data centers, and then doing that globally and ultimately deploying across the nearly 800 million square feet that represents their managed assets across all sorts of different types of real estate on a global scale. So with that being said, we've got a lot of experience doing this for base building owners and operators. We're particularly excited to announce that we will shortly be rolling out an initiative on the backs of the R10+T initiative to enable owners and operators to profit from selling our solution into your tenants. And I'll talk through that in some detail in a second. But the long and the short of it is that Local Law 97 implies full building responsibility for owners and operators of real estate. it doesn't provide any relief for the fact that 60% of your carbon footprint or energy footprint is a function of your tenant's activity. And so what we are developing initially with our existing customers, which span everyone from Rudin Management to Brookfield to RXR here in the city, to BlackRock on a global scale, JPMC on a global scale, as well as, most importantly, the single largest centrally controlled and managed portfolio in the country, which is the US GSA. We're working with, with them to take what we've learned in the base building sphere and take it into the tenant sphere. So what you're about to see is a version of a playbook that we will be distributing ultimately via the World Green Building Council that is specifically oriented towards owners and operators here in New York that have an appetite towards what I call cross-border transactions, which is this idea of reaching into the tenant space and providing them with solutions that solve for whole building carbon footprint reduction. So step number one is fundamentally to meter everything, which is not necessarily breakthrough science, but something that needs to be achieved at scale, at an affordable level, with a view towards creating a data-based baseline against which all the clever things that people in this room know how to do from a hardware and construction standpoint will then be able to go and do. The flip side to that is to do that in real time, and also to do it with carbon emissions in mind. Again, all in real time. Taking into account coefficients from watt time, taking into account coefficients from companies like Singularity, and making sure that you can visualize your baseline position against which you're going to perform. The third step is then to be able to apply this sort of omniscience, the fact that we understand what kind of data is coming out of your water systems, the fact that we understand exactly what your HVAC systems are doing, the fact that we've got AI that's monitoring each of the individual stages within an individual chiller unit at 300 VESI. Take all that data and be able to create a measurement and verification system that's IPMVP certified, that's ASHRAE standard compliant, so that when you do hardware-based applications, you're able to do them with an incredible amount of insight into the kind of results that you're going to receive. Step 4 is to get away from being particularly proud of how much benchmark reporting you're doing. Meaning, let's go from creating the data to analyzing the data. And let's provide you with those tools in an easy-to-use fashion. When I mean you, what I'm really talking about is building operators, folks that are as close to the problem as they possibly can be. Fourth, let's integrate all the newfangled stuff that you're already thinking about implementing. So when I think about the JP Morgan Chase platform, I think about my partner, Lincoln, in terms of all of the work that they're doing at ClearTrace on the supply side of the equation. And the way to think about this is there's two sides of the token. One side of the token is about finding and replacing your dirty fuel sources with clean fuel sources. But the other side of the coin, which is where we spend all of our time, is true energy demand management, true energy cost reduction, and ultimately carbon fine avoidance that will then pay for all of these programs. We do all of this, as I said, with artificial intelligence. And so when I say that I'm looking for partners, it's because the number that I signed up for at JP Morgan Chase is that by 2030, we will deliver to them 40% global energy demand reduction. That's worth roughly $1.2 billion to them in savings as a function of how much they spend today on energy. And I can't do it myself, which is why I can't wait to partner with everybody that's on that side of the room. Step 7, leverage the fact that you have economic drivers already on, in your hands that we can turbocharge. So one of the things that we'll be shortly revealing is a service offering where we'll give you back 100% of your demand response dollars. We can do that largely because we can replace the traditional manual demand aggregation service providers completely autonomously using software. Step 7, we will enable you to integrate with whatever measurement tool or climate accounting solution you choose to use. We, of course, recommend ClearTrace. We've got a terrific built-in integration with them, and that is battle-tested, and that's being deployed at scale. And then lastly, all of this data then becomes the basis for your REC strategy, for your offset strategy. And just to sort of emphasize my point around partnership, you'll notice that this is not a Prescriptive Data or an Nantum screenshot. It's quite the opposite. It's a ClearTrace a screenshot that contains not only supply side data, but it contains data coming out of Nantum, our flagship building operating system. And then lastly, it's important to actually close the loop. And so whether you're an HQO user, a Lane user, a VTS Rise user, again, back to the theme of partnership in order to deliver meaningful outcomes. Or for the record, if you're a Nantum Tenant Experience app user, all of the data that we capture can then be provided on a highly personalized basis to the phone that an actual tenant's employee is using, meaning, again, the same theme of we empower building operators because they're the closest to the problem and therefore are closest to the solution. Let's empower employees within the tenant organizations to take action where they see the problem and actually be the solution. Thanks very much.